I come from IBM. I work across the Nordics with a product called IBM Master 360. Probably most of you haven't heard of it. But I won't dig so much into the product because I think you already had a lot of information on products. So I have a business case here with me, or a case study with me from ISS. I know it's a huge, one of the more larger organization, but we started up very small, and they have a mobile journey, which is I think it's kind of fantastic. I worked with them for 2 years, and I learned small details every day. So I hope I can bring some of that to you. When we look at the mobile migration, you already heard a lot of figures probably today. I think it's all about how we create kind of greater flexibility and greater productivity, and try to make more employee satisfaction. And so there's a huge kind of transformation to the mobile area, and our product with the enterprise mobile management is kind of a technical enabler for that journey. When we started up with the ISS, it was a cloud-based solution. The Mars 360 is actually an acquisition IBM bought only 3 years ago in the United States. And we have a lot of products in this. I don't know how familiar you are with IBM, probably not a lot, but we have a huge, I came there 3 years ago, and I think it's new learnings every day, but we have a lot of brands, and this is now in the security brands. But what we are actually on kind of if I'm gonna take the kind of helicopter view, we are looking at including the Watson, the cognitive capabilities into all our solutions. And I'll give you an example of how we included that in the Mars 360 also. What is the kind of the backside of all the mobility transformation is that can you still hear me? Yeah. There's a lot of security concerns, and actually our product, if we look at the Gartner Group Enterprise Mobile Management, it's going to be called Unified Endpoint Management. And actually last week, IBM released a lot of new stuff in US on a conference in this area, where we launched the Unified Endpoint Management, and we cover now every license we sell in this area can be used for a laptop, Mac OS and Windows 7 and 10, and it can be used for all mobile devices, Android, iOS, etc., Windows, and it can be used for, we're looking at the IoT area at the moment to include everything in the Unified Endpoint Management. So I think we have a very good product which support all the various operating system and stuff like that. I won't dwell too much on, you've probably already seen there's a lot of analysts trying to predict what is the top mobile investments in the future, and I think it's reasonable that the enterprise mobile management is an area where you want to secure the employees. But you can always discuss if the figures is a little bit higher or lower. I think I'll go now to ISS because I think that's more relevant and a fantastic journey they have been on here. If they started looking at if I look at the challenges in ISS, and this is only from a Danish perspective, but they have actually rolled out the solution in more geographies in the world, UK, and in Sweden here also, actually. There were more than 7,500 employees in very different nationalities spread across the countries. Actually, more than 50% is kind of for foreign countries, so it's not a lot of Danish people. They actually won some prizes in Denmark for integrating other nationalities. So they are working quite heavily with kind of employees who have no or limited IT knowledge. Some of them don't even have an education, which is something they set themselves, and they have very limited IT support, so they don't have a huge headquarter to support all these people. And one of the fantastic things rolling out this solution is actually they came from zero and rolled out 3,000 devices now, and they didn't extend the number of employees in the IT organization. So there's still the same number of people. IBM is using actually the system ourselves, and we actually rolled out to more than beyond 100,000 users today, and we have, in the beginning we had 500 calls for our help desk, and I think the ease of use is something which is kind of very good. They need to establish a kind of running education program, and what they mean by that is actually there's a lot of new documentation which the Danish authorities are going to look at. So whenever a cleaner in ISS scratch their skin or have some chemical on their skin, they need to know that you have the latest documentation. So they put all the documentation in an app, which is one of the, they have kind of 3 preferred kind of apps, or the major apps they are using now. And this is the facility management system, which is the basic and core of ISS, and this is the security and kind of health. So when they go to also this documentation includes a lot of information about chemicals. So whenever they go to a hospital, one of the employees need to go to the hospital, they actually can show the doctor, these are the chemicals used here, and this is the chemical they got on the skin. So they can help them with the treatment also. But the main purpose of it was actually the Danish, it's called Arbejdstilsynet, which whenever they came to a site, they had more than 10,000 geographical locations alone in Denmark. So it was a huge job to go from paper to digitalize this journey from them. And meaning they have a dynamic client environment is because they have to onboard a lot of people. So they actually, the reason why 2 years ago they start to invest in and need a system to push the apps was actually they got 4 major contracts from 2 major banks and 2 large municipalities, or in the kind of the state-owned organizations, and the need to onboard was 200 for one of the facility management agreements and 500 for another one. So they can now, they actually send, they use Samsung Knox program. They send out the devices to the new employees, and when they open the devices, they push automatically the apps to their device, so they are up and running right away. So this is with a turnover for which is very high for employees in ISS. It's very, and that's the reason why they call it kind of dynamic client environment, that they need to be able to onboard new people all the time. Sorry. What they did, we helped them doing a bit of calculation on the business value they got from these system, and of course the time when they spent on documentation and stuff like that was also kind of part of this, and they reduced costs for both IT companies, and they kind of, the workforce management is actually the 3rd app. I didn't mention that before. And the workforce management, with that, whenever they use their phone, it's kind of the most critical, one of the most critical systems. So the cleaner should know whenever they are going to have a new job, and they have they can finalize the job on the app, and it's integrated to the SAP system, SAP system, finance system, so they can immediately invoice the customers, which is another benefit they got from it. So there's a lot of kind of workflow automation benefits they also got from this. And the user productivity actually turned out from the IT organization. They made some calculation that 80% of the mobile devices were used for calls, and now it's 80%, which is used for the applications they are now running instead of calls. So they hardly use the mobile phones for calls. And actually they have a mixed BYOD and corporate-owned devices. So we kind of secure them all. ISS has chosen not to develop uh, their apps for Apple, and that's because this system is mainly started up being used for the blue collar workers, which is a huge amount of the employees at ISS. So it gave a lot of, instead of having it was the kind of digitization journey they took with the blue collar workers, because those blue collar workers didn't even have an email before, and they didn't have mails and stuff like that. So this was the first time they ever kind of used their digital and devices for their job. One thing more which actually ISS is looking at now is to help using Mars 360 to help ISS to meet the general data protection rules. I don't know how familiar you are with these in Sweden, and I know there's still some time to go to this in 2018 in May. But if I look at some of the fines, and I think the 4% global turnover in fine level is what makes some of the companies out there a little bit nervous on this global data protection rules. And I know they're not localized yet, so there's still a lot of, I think there are 50 issues which is not localized in this. But any company doing business in Europe and also from abroad, handling data, sending data to Europe, are going to comply to this general data protection rules. And this is generally done to protect the consumer, as you probably know, and actually in this system there's some requirements that they should be able to erase all the data for the consumer if they leave the company, and actually some one thing which is also discussed right now is how much data you're allowed to bring with you when you leave a company. So there's a lot of things to comply to, and ISS hasn't taken the full journey yet, because I think nobody has. And there's also kind of requirements for the 72 hours to notify a breach and stuff like that. So there's a lot of stuff, and there's a lot of consultancy. I think probably also here in Sweden, but in Denmark, a lot of consultancy companies are seeing good business opportunities in this, and this is probably understandable. This is one of the largest companies in probably the world. I cannot show ISS business case, but I just took an example, and I know it's a huge organization, Walmart. But actually we calculated a kind of a payback time in 6 months for implementing the Mars 360 at Walmart, and came to some very huge figures. I would say actually the Mars 360 company was called Fiberlink when IBM acquired it 3 years ago, and actually Fiberlink scaled use for the SMB segment, so they didn't have a lot of large enterprise company, and that's probably the benefit they saw of also having IBM trying to add some of the larger enterprises to this. But it's just to say that that's also something we can do if needed. When I look at our product portfolio, and now I go to a little bit high touch on the product. For blue collar workers like ISS, they will probably need the kind of the more simple package where they can push some apps and they can have some secure device management. And then you can go on, if you look at the more premium and enterprise suite, we start to implement some of the kind of content management and stuff for white collar workers in offices. Some of the kind of the new stuff is also that we integrated. I don't know how familiar you are with IBM's portfolio, but we bought a lot of security company, Curator, BigFix, AppScanner, etc., and Apex, which was mainly used for bank. And this is actually a functionality which we now implemented called Mobile Threat Management in the Mars 360. And we try to include a lot of stuff in from the other security products we have. And we normally offer kind of the security intelligence we are now building in. Some of the latest stuff I saw in our portal, we actually can we take out all the data we have from our data centers, and we can advise if you're a company with 200 employees, you can benchmark yourself to another company with 200 employees, and those employees you can see did they which apps do they whitelist and blacklist. If you're ISS, they actually blacklist Facebook. They don't want their employees to be on Facebook when they're working. But that's specific for them. I know some of the retailers do the same because they don't want people to. And you can use geofencing. So whenever you go into maybe the retail shop, you can geofence. So you automatically do it, and then when you leave the area, you can open up again for this kind of stuff. So there's a lot of development and new features coming in, and also for the new functionality, we had 11 major upgrades last year, and we have 769 smaller updates in this product alone. So it's huge, and I think that's the benefit of having the cloud solutions. Of course, I know the security concerns. I work with some bank. We can provide the kind of the SOC reports for the data centers we have in Europe and stuff like that. So it satisfied most of the customers I work with. But we don't have an on-prem solution. We actually built it because Gartners told us we were in Magic Quadrant together with the other competitors we have there, and that we should have an on-prem solution. But it turned out that we didn't have a lot of customers in the on-prem, and as Fiberlink was built on cloud, so we only have a cloud solution. When we talk about the unified endpoint management, I think we start to include some of the functionality we had in other unified endpoint management, like Big Fix functionality, and we included that, and this is not something we specifically price. We put it into our bundles, and now it's part of these bundles we have there. This is another example of security intelligence built into our portal. This is the way our portal looks, so you can immediately see in the red areas what is out of compliance and stuff like that. And of course you can, and there's a lot of new things coming up now. It was released last week, and it's implemented in the portal here those days. If you're into press releases, this is the press releases with Mars 360 with Watson from last week when we brought the Watson to mobile device management. So it's just to say that there's a lot of attention on this now, because we had a conference in US where it was released. So that's the reason why there's a lot of, and this is part of it's the last slide I'm going to show you. But this is just to say that we have brought all these areas is kind of where IBM bought companies, and this is only the device management in mobile I'm going to talk about now. So we have a lot of other companies we bought in the last 10-20 years, which you might know some of them, QRadar and stuff like that. I think that's it.
Okay, Dorthe. Tusind tak.
Velkommen.
Der bliver mulighed til at stille lidt spørgsmål til Dorthe lige udenfor etterpå, så